It's 5:30 and time for our daily town hall here on Channel 2 News. Thank you so much for joining us on this Monday. And we're going to get to the coronavirus a little bit later on in the show, but we're mixing it up a little bit today.
Right. We are going to first spend some time having a conversation about the protests that have taken place here in Western New York following the death a week ago of George Floyd in Minneapolis. And we welcome our guests and your thoughts, too. You can text them to us from home. It's text 2 at 716-849-2200.
And we do have some special guests today. Later on, we're going to be talking with Jamal Cruz of Say Yes Buffalo. He was among the protesters here in Buffalo this past weekend.
But first, joining us live right now, our Buffalo Mayor Byron Brown and Lana Benetovich, the president and CEO of the National Federation for Just Communities of Western New York.
And we thank you both for your time. Mayor, we do want to start with you. There were two especially difficult scenes in Buffalo this past weekend. Sadly, these violent incidents really distracted from what I think was the overall meaning of these protests, and we want to talk about that in a few minutes as well. But these two incidents included someone setting fire to City Hall late this afternoon. You and others talked about state and federal charges now filed against that suspect. But the other really disturbing incident from Saturday involved a car seemingly crashing through a crowd of people in Niagara Square. We're looking at some of the video from the scene there. Can you tell us what police know about what transpired there?
That is still under investigation. The woman that was in the vehicle at this point is a non-cooperating.
And at this point, Mayor, do we know as far as if she was among the protesters, was there outside agitation in that? It's just sparked so many questions among people in the community, sharing videos and asking questions about what prompted all of that. It was disturbing to watch. I'm sure you agree.
There is a belief that she has a connection to the protesters. There is law enforcement evidence and local evidence that some people that participated in that protest were from outside this community. They were outside agitators whose motive was to incite violence and to create chaos in this community.
Mary Alice?
Well, let's bring in Lana Benetovich. For the past 30 years, Lana, you have worked on social justice issues and race relations in Buffalo and Western New York. First, your thoughts on the protest and violence that you've seen across the country, and then those here in Buffalo. How do they compare?
Well, we're going through very, very challenging times, and the protests across the country are systematic. You know, it's what's going on. People are frustrated and they want to be heard. And if they haven't been heard, then they're just showing up and standing in different places. So for someone who has worked so much in the last decades for trying to have people be able to be heard and to talk to each other, it's a moment, but people are together. This.
Unfortunately, Lana, we're having a little bit of a problem with your connection, so I'm going to ask you to repeat your answer somewhat, because you've witnessed many protests in Buffalo and Western New York over the past 3 decades. But what do you make of the serious violence that happened here? Was that a surprise to you, or is this something that you've seen simmering for a while? Because I know you've worked with Mayor Brown on a number of initiatives over the years to improve race relations and to improve cooperation between Buffalo police and also with City Hall. So perhaps, Mayor Brown, since we have you up right now, you can talk about that kind of work that's being done in our city.
There's a lot of work being done in the city to build the community-police relationship. The National Federation for Just Communities is a great organization that the city has partnered with. There are young activists in the community that the city is reaching out to. A young activist today that was involved with the protest called to speak and meet with me today. I'm going to meet with that young man in the very near future. I have been in conversation with Jamil Cruz, who was giving me feedback on how young people were feeling in the community, how members of the community were feeling. All of that input from people is what we need to listen to. Like Lana said, people want to be heard. People are hurting. People are in pain. Watching George Floyd killed in Minneapolis was very painful to many people. But it just brought back things that we have seen so many times before. Eric Garner, Freddie Gray, and many other Black people that have been killed at the hands of law enforcement operating improperly. So people want to be heard on racial inequity. They want to be heard on police brutality. And it is important for our community not only to listen, but to take action.
And Mayor, on that exact point, I heard a really interesting analysis on all this from Van Jones, who is oftentimes on CNN. He is a Democratic activist, but then he worked with the White House on criminal justice reform. He said he believes we have two paths that we can go down as a country. One of them is not to address these systemic racial issues, and he worries about where that path would take all of us. He said there is a much better path, and that is that leaders like yourself and so many others, and we as a country, come up with a plan, and there are tangible results that come out of all of this that can improve the lives of so many people. One of the things that a lot of activists have called for is the end of chokeholds in police departments. There are some departments around the country that have banned them. Buffalo is not among that, although there have been some calls. Where do you stand on that, and why can't today the Buffalo Police Department say that chokeholds are now barred moving forward?
Again, I am open to that. I am open to listening to what activists are recommending. I know that our police commissioner and our police management and our city council are open to listen to activists, and that's what needs to happen.
All right, Mayor, thank you so much. Unfortunately, we're having a little bit of difficulty with Lana's camera. We had so many questions that we wanted to ask you there. Mary Alice, if you want to come in, we'll talk one final question here with the mayor before we let him go.
Actually, I don't know. It looks like Lana's camera has unfrozen. If we can maybe take a crack at it now, because she's someone who has been working in this area for 3 decades in Buffalo, and I'm really anxious to hear her reflection, but they're telling me technologically that no, we can't do that. So, Mr. Mayor, if there's any takeaway for you in the coming days and weeks, perhaps, do you see the need in Buffalo for something to happen as far as, you know, the relationship and improving that with the community, to give them an opportunity to voice in a calmer setting some of the angst and the concern and the frustration that you're seeing in Niagara Square these past few days?
Absolutely. There have to be forums to listen to the community. There have to be ways that we implement changes that people are asking for. But I think we have to be very clear. It's not just policing. It's not just brutality of rogue police officers. It is every sector of society where people are experiencing racism, where people are experiencing discrimination. Many Black people every single day in this country feel like somebody has their knee on their neck and they can't breathe. So we have to be aware that it is more than just policing, it's more than just government. It is in every sector of this society where people are feeling the sting and the pain of racial injustice.
All right, Mayor and Lana, thank you both for spending some time with us here. This is a conversation that obviously will continue. We thank you for joining us live here on Channel 2. Have a good night. Coming up here on our town hall today, we are going to continue the conversation with someone who was at the peaceful protests in Buffalo this past weekend. The mayor referenced him. We'll be back with that right after this.